Da 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 da. Welcome back to disenFRIENDSchised, the podcast where we identify disenfranchised grief through every episode of Friends. I'm Karen Bulinski Mathison, founder of The Naked Grief and creator of this disenfranchised podcast. This is episode 18 of season 2, the one where Dr. Drake Ramoray dies. Today, we're diving into an episode that is packed with heavy hitters. We've got career suicide, domestic instability, and the paralyzing anxiety of the numbers game. This isn't just about a soap opera character falling down a shaft. It's about the sudden, violent end of our self-image and the quiet, creeping realization that people we love have lives that existed long before we showed up. So let's strip down and get honest about the grief that we aren't supposed to talk about. The one where everything falls apart. In this episode, Joey is riding high. He is Dr. Drake Ramoray, after all, on Days of Our Lives. He's got the big apartment, the fancy, if slightly questionable furniture, and he's finally been being recognized as an actor. But when an interview comes from Soap Opera Digest, in a fit of ego-driven insecurity, Joey tells the reporter he writes his own lines, and the writers of the show, who actually write the lines, don't take kindly to this. So before the commercial break is over, Dr. Drake Ramoray is plummeting down an empty elevator shaft, and Joey's career, his financial stability, and his arrival in the industry are killed off in a single script rewrite. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, or the purple apartment, Monica and Richard are hitting that awkward milestone. The "how many people have you been with" conversation. It starts with Phoebe accidentally outing Monica for having a lot of boyfriends. Because she says, "You're my favorite." And there's been a lot of guys that Monica's been with. And Richard goes, I'm her favorite. And apparently there's been a lot. Doesn't sit well with him. Richard, being the mature mustache-wearing dreamboat that he is, reveals that his number is 2. Monica's not 2. Across the hall, Ross and Rachel are playing the same game. They're actually feeling sorry for Monica being in the situation, and then the conversation diverts back to them, and Ross gets hung up on the quality of Rachel's past with Paulo, not so much on the numbers. He's grieving the fact that he isn't the animal in her history, and while everyone is obsessed with their pasts, Chandler is living a present-day nightmare with Eddie. Eddie is officially off the rails. He's accusing Chandler of just crazy stuff, and like sleeping with his ex-girlfriend, Tilly, killing the goldfish that was never delivered in a tank, and then he replaces it with a goldfish cracker named Chandler. Bum, bum, bum. Now let's play Name the Disenfranchised Grief. Because not all grief comes from death. It's job loss, career pivots, divorce, breakups, empty nests, moving, identity shifts, friendships ending, the loss of life you thought you'd have. At The Naked Grief, we offer support communities that meet you where you are without pressure, toxic positivity, or having to explore why it hurts. So when we talk about disenfranchised grief, we're talking about losses that the world doesn't give us a Hallmark card for. And the professional self-sabotage grief that Joey experiences is true and real. It's specific. The hot sting of losing a dream because you tripped over your own feet. When Joey loses his job, the reason is his own big mouth. Because he caused it, society and even his friends initially might think he doesn't have the right to mourn it. Well, you shouldn't have said you wrote the lines, Joey, but the loss of the dream is still a loss. We grieve the version of ourselves that was successful, even even if we are the ones who pulled the rug out from under us. If you think back to season 1, early season 2, when Monica got fired, it was the same thing. She did something that she didn't know she shouldn't have done, but really she might have self-sabotaged her own promotion. The friends were a little bit more supportive and understanding in that, though. The loss of domestic safety. Yeah, Chandler is truly living with somebody who is living in another plane sometimes. Chandler's grief here is subtle but terrifying. Your home is supposed to be your sanctuary. It's where you take off the Chandler Bing armor and just exist. And when Eddie starts stealing shoe insoles and watching Chandler sleep, the sanctuary is dead. And this is domestic safety grief. The mourning of a space that no longer feels like yours. He tells Eddie to get out, and then Eddie shows up the next day with a human head that he found inside of Macy's on a mannequin, and he took it home to turn it upside down and make it into a chip bowl, which may have actually been funny if this wasn't the same guy that sits next to your bed and watches you sleep. So the analysis of the friends' support. How do friends handle these massive shifts? Honestly, the support system that the friends provide isn't always textbook support, but they don't disappear. So even if they're not showing up the way Joey needed or Chandler needed, or even in Eddie's case, if he had had a support system to show up for him, maybe he wouldn't have been quite as delusional as he was, telling people that him and Chandler did a road trip to Vegas for the weekend. A road trip. Vegas is quite a drive from New York City. But anyway, neither here nor there. The friends still are present. They don't hide. And oftentimes in our own lives, our support systems do disappear, but it's not lack of support. It's their own lives happening. But when we're the ones grieving, quite often we do take it personally. So it's also a question of remembering to speak up, find your voice, tell people what you need, because they can't often read your mind. So when Joey finds out that he's been killed off, the gang tries to offer toxic positivity. This wasn't your time. You're going to find something better. Rachel suggests that they might bring him back, but the writers made sure that his brain was smashed beyond repair. And the friends are there, but they are so wrapped up in their own numbers game and relationship drama that Joey is left to process the end of his dream in that big, lonely apartment. And look at Phoebe. She tries to help Chandler bond with Eddie, which is a classic example of helping, making things worse. She validates the weirdness instead of seeing the red flags for what they are. In the world of mental health, we call this toxic positivity or misplaced mediation. Chandler didn't need to bond with Eddie. He needed an exit strategy. And then there's the condom situation. Monica and Rachel literally play rock, paper, scissors for the last condom in their apartment. It's a hilarious sitcom moment, but it's also a metaphor for how we prioritize our own needs over our friend's emotional state. Now keep in mind, there's a couple of things going on here. You got two grown men in an apartment who didn't bring their own protection. You got girls that have their own box, but they're down to their last one. So that's a whole other side thing that I'm not going to really delve into, but I wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. And then we've got them fighting over rock, paper, scissors, but Richard just told Monica that he loves her. I feel like that trumps Ross and Rachel having an argument over trying to get Ross to show that he is as much an animal as Paula was. I mean, the first time somebody tells you love you, that's pretty special. And being able to physically express that is pretty powerful. But yeah, there's a lot of weirdness in there. But even though that this is supposed to be a funny sitcom moment, it's also a metaphor for how we prioritize our own needs and our friends' emotional states. As I said, Monica and Richard's relationship is in a fragile number shaming state, and Rachel's win leaves Monica alone to dwell on her insecurities. I mean, she walks over to Richard and says, "They're doing it tonight. We can do it tomorrow." And he said, "In the future, if you can clue me in on this stuff ahead of time." Um, and he's got a point, but you're with somebody now, so why wouldn't you have one in your wallet or whatever? Like, I don't get it. So some coaching moments and what ifs. As a coach, I look at this episode and I see a lot of scars being poked. The numbers game reframe. Why do we mourn our partner's past? We feel like we're competing with ghosts. Monica feels easy because Richard was so selective. Ross feels tame because Paula was an animal. And in your 20s, I think that numbers conversation came up a lot. As we get older, not that I'm like a pro dater or anything, but like that conversation doesn't come up anymore. And why? Because we've had decades of being single, of being out in the world. And I think people are afraid to admit how many times they've tried and failed at relationships. And it's not a matter of the number of partners anymore, which I think may have been what it looked like for Monica and Rachel. It's trial and error. It's seriously, I'm putting myself out there. Now we're about to get intimate. Is this really the right person for that? And you hope you find that connection, and you do it sometimes just to keep their interest going. And again, because society sets the standard of the 3-date rule and the number of days you should wait to make that first phone call after you meet somebody. Like, all of these things are at the window now, folks. Like, with internet dating and everything else, like, there is no 3-date rule. I call it the meeting interview. After I have had several texts or dialogues on the phone with somebody, and I determine whether or not they are worthy of my time to go drive somewhere to meet them for a 20-minute coffee, to validate whether or not they are somebody that I want to get to know better. Because that's when you want to see if there's a mutual attraction, if there's some kind of chemistry, if there's true interest, or if they were just really good at writing a profile. But generally, I can't get past hi. They say hi, you say, "Hi, how are you?" They say, "Okay." And then the conversation dies. And then the next day it's hi. Well, I can't. I that's exhausting. So anyway, numbers game, real. As you get older, I think the numbers game doesn't become such a hot topic. But a coaching tip for the girls would be, stop trying to out animal a ghost. You're grieving a version of your partner that doesn't exist anymore. Richard loves Monica because of her history, not in spite of it. Validation comes from the present, not the tally mark. The self-sabotage pivot. Joey killed Drake Ramoray. We often kill off our own success when we feel like imposters. Joey didn't feel like a real actor, so he lied to sound like one, which resulted in him not being an actor at all. The what if. What if Joey had a publicist or even just a friend tell him, "You are enough exactly as the guy who says the lines." If we can hold space for our own inadequacy, we don't have to lie to cover it up. Validating the roommate trauma. If you're living in a space where you feel watched, judged, or unsafe, you are in a state of chronic stress. Chandler calling Eddie a freak of nature is his way of trying to laugh off a situation that is actually a mental health crisis. It's imperative to protect your sanctuary at all costs. You cannot heal in the same environment that is making you sick. Some real life examples. We see Joey's elevator shaft moment in the real world every day. It's the sudden layoff. It's the we're going in a different direction email. It's when you lose your job, especially one that felt like your big break. The grief is physical. You lose your routine, your identity, and your sense of future. And let's talk about the numbers game. In the age of social media, we don't just have to hear about the palos, we can see them. We can scroll back to 2018 and see our partners looking happy with someone else. That is a form of disenfranchised grief. You're mourning the fact that you weren't there for those moments. You're grieving the exclusive version of them that you wish you had. If you've ever sat in your car for 20 minutes because you didn't want to go inside your own house, you know exactly what Chandler was feeling. That's not just roommate trouble. That's a loss of safety. And let's go back to the social media stuff. So everybody has their own etiquette with the social media and the dating and the lives we had prior to any new relationship. I go back and forth between labeling myself as a widow and single on Facebook. I don't like widow hunters. I will get into all of that on another video recording because the widow hunting is definitely a real thing. It's a little deeper than the predatory AI generated scammers asking for iPhone cards and things like that, or Apple cards or whatever. But that's not to say that there aren't genuine people out there. So I go back and forth. I also have seen people that never take down their pictures of their last engagement or their last relationship that ended 6 months ago, and now they're with somebody new, and their profile picture is still with the last person. Give yourself the credit if you are in a relationship like that to call out your partner and say, hey, if we're in a committed relationship, why are you and your ex still your profile cover? I get that you're not going to delete the photos that are on your that are buried in your file, but I don't want to be a secret. And be prepared, because if you are supposed to be that secret, then maybe it's time to walk away. And it hurts. And it sucks. I just did it myself. But when you are strong enough to identify what isn't right for you to get to where you should be, that's huge. And even with Joey thought he was invincible until he hit the button of the shaft and the elevator door opened and there was no floor. And sometimes we have to hit the bottom before we realize that we're carrying too much ego on the way down. So next time we're going to look at Season 2, Episode 19, the one where Eddie won't go. We're talking about the absolute nightmare of a lingering loss, when the person or the problem is officially gone, but they just won't leave. And if you're struggling with a Dr. Ramoray moment in your own life, whether it's a career fall or a numbers insecurity, head on over to thenakedgrief.com. What you'll find here is a private judgment-free space to process what's changed, practical tools, prompts, and guidance that you can use right away. Multiple styles of support so you can choose what fits and switch if you need to. A path to find your footing, one small step at a time. If you're not ready for therapy or one-on-one coaching just yet, but you know that you need something, you're in the right place at thenakedgrief.com. We have resources to help you name your grief and start the healing process. So stop hiding your loss. Get naked with your grief. I'll talk to you next time. Da 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 da.